The topic of discussion is planes of work today. You know, S.R. Ranganathan, the father of library and information science in India, has a great contribution in different fields of library and information science. And his greatest contribution has been in library classification and library cataloging. And out of these contributions, today we'll be discussing how Ranganathan has given this concept of planes of work that is applicable in library classification. As the name suggests, that we will be discussing the differences in the levels that we apply while we work, and this work that we'll be discussing here is library classification. You know, library classification is done at two different levels. There are two sets of people who are involved in the work of classification. One is those who design the schemes of classification, that is the classificationists. And the other set of people are those who apply what has been designed by the library classificationists. And this set of people is called library classifiers. So the planes of work that has been suggested, advocated, proposed by S.R. Ranganathan is useful for library classificationists as well as library classifiers. Before we really go into how it has been done, we would like to tell you that otherwise also, while we work, while we study, while we produce something, our thinking, our process of thinking, our work in any subject or discipline goes on at three levels. It starts with our thought process. We think something and ideas start developing. And it is these ideas that are put into words. So the idea and the words, we say ideas are put into shape by means of words. So what our thoughts are, we put our thoughts into meaningful communication by way of words. It is generally discussed whether ideas first or words first. In fact, it is a mutual relationship between ideas and words, and they go together. Without words, ideas do not grow. And without ideas, words are of no use. Therefore, we work at these two levels, idea and words, and while developing a particular subject, while developing a particular discipline, we work at three planes, because while ideas are put into words, these words that we use to convey ideas at times are misleading. There is a lot of homonyms, synonyms, homographs that are there in our language. Otherwise also there are different languages that result into creating confusion. Therefore, you would have seen that in any discipline, we tend to develop a terminology. And this terminology is bound. You convey certain things and you mean to say by those terminology. Therefore, you develop a terminology. In some disciplines, this terminology is in the form of notation. I give you a simple example. Like in chemistry, there are symbols for the elements. As you would have remembered that we make use of Fe for iron. Similarly, there are different symbols. As we have all studied the periodic table, we have seen that we make use of symbols. Similarly, we make use of symbols otherwise also in other disciplines like units. When we express things in units, we make use of symbols. Similarly, Ranganathan also, while he entered library classification, he was working on the theory of library classification. He felt that there is something missing. He felt that this plane, that the verbal plane on which we are working, it is inhibiting the work of idea and notational plane. Though the planes are different from each other, but then still there is an interdependency amongst these three planes, and therefore Ranganathan thought, yes, we should be working at three planes of work separately, consciously, systematically, so that we are able to take care of the problems in one plane of work and help the other plane of work also. Therefore, it was in 1944 that Ranganathan proposed, yes, we should have three planes of work, and he named these three planes of work as idea plane, verbal plane, and the notational plane. As we have been saying, that it is at the idea plane that our thoughts come to our mind, and it is since the thoughts in library classification relate to universe of knowledge, relate to universe of subjects. What are these thoughts? These thoughts are related to the different subjects that are part of this universe of subjects. What is the structure of this universe of subjects? How these different parts are? How are they related to each other? What are the different types of relationships among these subjects? And how these relationships are expressed, we say, how they are mapped. And they are mapped as a sequence, coming one after the other, occupying different places, showing the relationship. This all is comes under the purview of the idea plane. Now the verbal plane, as we said, it is the plane that is concerned with the terminology. What the thoughts are, the thoughts that have developed at the idea plane are put in words. And these words are, since they are at times confusing, they have different meanings, they are used in different contexts, they are also used in other disciplines. Therefore, we develop a terminology that is error free, that is objective, that doesn't express any particular opinion. It is one-to-one relationship between the term and its meaning. They should be synonym free. They should be homonym free. That means what is communicated is understood, and what is to be understood is communicated. That is what is the purview of the verbal plane. Notational plane, as I was telling you, that this notation is something which is unique, which is what is expressed at the idea plane. It conveys those ideas, it conveys those meanings, it conveys those relationships. Such a notation has to be there in library classification, and therefore this is what has to be done at notational plane. And I was telling you, this notation is brief, is in the form of numerals, it is in the form of different sets of symbols, and they convey a unique meaning. As I had given you the example, and in chemistry, in the periodic table, whenever we say a symbol, it conveys a particular meaning. So these are the three planes of work. So why should we have three planes of work? As we have discussed, that these three planes of work enable us to systematically develop the thoughts, to develop a terminology that is clear, is conveys what it intends to convey, and at the level of the notation, we are able to implement what we have thought, what we have explored at the idea plane. Therefore, such division of the planes of work enables a classificationist and a classifier to develop the three planes of work well, and they are also developed in close unison with each other. So it's a systematic development of the theory of library classification. There is a coordination between the three planes of work. It enables holistic development of the theory of library classification. It's a little bit difficult to understand. We'll go on and discuss these planes of work in detail as we move further. Now, what happens? You would have all read by now, not only in this course, otherwise also while coming to this discipline, you would have heard of 5 laws of library science that Ranganathan had given. In fact, prior to coming to library information science, in your own disciplines also, you would have seen there are fundamental laws. And these fundamental laws are given at the level of a discipline. For a discipline, there are laws given. Like you would have remembered in the mechanics, in physics, in mechanics, you had seen Newton's laws of motion. And very simple laws, so look very evident, and such laws are given for any discipline, are called fundamental laws. Similarly, Ranganathan had also given 5 laws of library science, and I would repeat those laws that books are for use, every user his or her book, every book its reader, save the time of the library and library staff, library is a growing organism. Similarly, when he divided the work in 3 different planes for library classification, he gave canons for library. So canons are a step below laws. Laws are given for a discipline, as I was telling you. Similarly, canons are given for a part of the discipline, that means for a subject. So Ranganathan gave canons for library classification, which is a subject of library information science. Similarly, he also gave canons for library cataloging. So this is how he separated the work, and he gave canons for idea plane, canons for verbal plane, and canons for the notational plane. So we'll discuss one by one the canons for the different planes of work that have really helped to build this theory of library classification and has given us a mass of theory and a philosophy on which we have developed the schemes of library classification, one of which we will be studying in due course of time. Now let us start with the canons of idea plane. You know, when you have a universe of subjects and you want to classify that universe of subjects, you need to see this universe of subjects at least 2 different universes. Because if this whole mass of things that is there in this universe of subjects, if it is not seen as 2 different groups of masses, you will not have the process of classification done here. Classification it brings together and at the same time divides also. So if you want to bring together certain things, you have to separate out some of these things out of this particular group. Therefore, how do you divide? How do you group together? How do you bring certain things together, and how do you separate these things from others? It is on the basis of the characteristics that these things possess. If we talk in technical language, we say there is a universe of subjects, and this universe of subjects has a number of entities, and these entities are there. They are not in any particular order. It's just a mass of entities. It's an agglomerate of things, and you have to separate these out into smaller uniform groups having entities which are similar in nature. And for that, you need to know the characteristics. And therefore, Ranganathan gave canons of characteristics. But once you know the characteristics on the basis of which you can divide this universe into at least 2 further sub-universes, you have to further go on. You have to apply further characteristics so that you can divide these subgroups into further sub-subgroups. Therefore, Ranganathan gave canons for succession of characteristics. While you form these groups and subgroups and sub-subgroups, you result into forming some groups which are called as arrays. You form certain groups in relation to each other that go on to form chains. I will tell you what is an array and what is a chain. But before telling you, I would like to inform you that Ranganathan gave canons for arrays, canons for chains. And similarly, once these arrays and chains have formed, once the process of classification has happened, you result into a number of things, and you have to give a filiatory sequence. Filiatory sequence means you put all these that you have got out of this classification, these groups and subgroups, into a sequence, into a systematic sequence, and that is what is called a filiatory sequence. Why? When we say systematic sequence, means you are following a particular order and you are putting all these in that order, and that is a sequence which is called a filiatory sequence. Filiatory comes from the word affiliation, so they have some sort of affiliation with each other, and that is the canon, last canon for idea plane. So let us discuss these canons one by one. Now, canons of characteristics, that was the first canon I was telling you. It has further 4 canons, and these canons are canon of differentiation. So it's a very simple canon. that when you apply characteristics to a population, to a universe of subjects, the characteristic chosen should be such that you are able to differentiate the entities of this universe of subjects into further subgroups. If the canon is not able to, if the characteristic is not able to differentiate these entities into further subgroups, then classification will not happen. Like, let us think of your group. You are all studying this particular course, and I say that you all possess a characteristic, you all have a feature that you are all living beings. And if I try to divide you on the basis of this feature, that is living beings, then I'll not be able to differentiate you. Therefore, I'm violating the canon of differentiation. But if I choose a characteristic, that means I trying to divide you on the basis of gender, then I'll be able to make two groups out of you at least. And therefore, I am able to differentiate this universe of subjects into two groups, and I am following the canon of differentiation. So I think that is clear. Now let us move to the next canon, that is canon of relevance. It says that there are a number of characteristics that are possessed by the entities of your universe, but not all characteristics may be used for the purpose of classification. You should choose only those characteristics to divide this universe of subjects into further sub-universes which are relevant to the purpose of classification. You are classifying with a purpose. What is your purpose of classification? You should take that into account, then only apply the characteristics to divide the universe of subjects. So if in a class I want to have people on the basis of their IQs, then I use IQ as a characteristic. But if I want to choose people for a game, for a outdoor sport, and I would like to have people on the basis of their physical strength, then I would use this characteristic. Similarly, in a library, if I tend to classify books on the basis of their thickness, which is a characteristic possessed by all the books, then that will not be a relevant characteristic, because the users who come to the library to use these books, they will not want books which are thin or thick. They want books on particular themes, on particular subjects. Therefore, I need to use only those characteristics which are relevant, which really satisfy the purpose of classification. Now let us move to the next canon, that is canon of ascertainability. This is another canon of characteristic. It says, as the term indicates, yes, the characteristic that you choose to divide the population should be ascertainable. You should not choose a characteristic which you cannot ascertain in the population. Like if I'm trying to classify books on literature, and I tend to use a characteristic as date of death of the authors, then those who are living, we are not able to ascertain their date of death. Therefore, it is better to use the characteristic which is ascertainable, that is date of birth of the authors. Therefore, such characteristics should be chosen which are ascertainable. And the last canon of characteristic is canon of permanence. The characteristic that we choose to divide a population should be such that it doesn't change with time. You know, we possess certain characteristics that change with time. As I was telling you that the color of the books in a library changes with time. The status of people in life also changes with time. Therefore, we should not choose certain characteristics that change with time, but only choose those characteristics which remain constant with time. Now, let us move to the next canon, that is canon for succession of characteristics. Now, we apply characteristics one after the other in a universe of subject, so that we are able ultimately to reach unitary classes, that is the purpose of classification. And under this, there are three canons: the canon of concomitance, the canon of relevant succession, and the canon of consistent succession. Now, what is this canon of concomitance? Ranganathan said that while you apply characteristics one after the other in a universe of subject, in a chain of the further sub-universes that arise out of a universe of subject, these characteristics one after the other should not result into the same arrangement. If they result into the same arrangement, then you are violating the canon of concomitance. Like if you apply on the books on literature. First, you divide these books on the basis of date of birth of authors, and next time you apply the characteristic age of the authors, then these two arrangements will be similar. Therefore, there is no use applying these two characteristics one after the other or in succession. Therefore, this is what is canon of concomitance. Now, what is canon of relevant succession? It says that when there are a number of characteristics on the basis of which you can subdivide a universe of subjects, you should choose characteristics one after the other that they are relevant to the purpose of classification. Again, I take this example of literature, books of literature. You know, these books have these subjects have certain characteristics on the basis of which we can divide these universes. Like the language, we can use language as a characteristic on the basis of which we can divide the books of literature. Similarly, we can divide them on the basis of form. So if we apply form first and then language, then this will not be a relevant succession, because if we apply form first, then we will have all poetry on one side, all drama on the other side. But poetry of different languages will come together. Drama of different languages will come together. But there's not a relevant succession. When a person comes to the library, he is interested in a poetry, he would like to have poetry of a particular language. Therefore, language first and form second should be the relevant succession. Similarly, canon of consistent succession says that once you apply an order, it should be consistently applied. Now we have to discuss the canons for array and chain. And I would like to tell you that array, in very simple words, I would explain you what is an array and what is a chain. Just think of a family. You would have seen family trees being drawn by people for their family. They start with the great grandfathers, the earliest known in the family, and they move down to second generation, third generation, fourth generation, and they go down till they reach the present generation. So chain means a number of classes that are linked with each other to a common link. Such a sequence is called a chain. Similarly, an array means that out of a universe, if certain classes come out, all these are said to comprise an array. So they should all be arising out from the same universe. Like in a family, real brothers and sisters, they comprise an array. But if you talk of cousins arising out of another part of the family, a brother or sister, they are called cousins. These cousins are not arrays, they are collateral arrays. So arrays means the family members arising out of the same parents. That is what is called an array. And now you have understood what is an array and a chain. We'll discuss the canons for array and chain. The canons for array are canon of exhaustiveness, canon of exclusiveness, canon of helpful sequence, and canon of consistency. Exhaustiveness, as the name itself indicates, that the characteristic that you choose to form arrays out of a population should be such that it exhausts all the members of the universe into the members of the array. Like if the characteristic is such that some members do not have that characteristic, it will not be able to place these members into the groups. Therefore, this should be exhaustive. Like if we say in a group there are different type of genders, members of different genders, and you say males on this side and females on that side, and you don't apply transgenders there, then some members will be left over in that population. So you have not applied characteristic which satisfy the canon of exhaustiveness. Now, what is canon of exclusiveness? Canon of exclusiveness says that the characteristic that you choose to divide the members in an array should be such that they come out to groups exclusively. No member should be such that it can belong to either this group or that group. There should be, the characteristic chosen should be such that uniquely a member should belong to one group or the other group. That is what is called the canon of exclusiveness. Now, canon of helpful sequence. Once these arrays have been formed, they have to be grouped, and you need to group them in a helpful order. I'll tell you about the principles of helpful sequence. which are the part of canon of helpful sequence after 2 minutes here only in the discussion. And canon of consistent sequence, as we have seen, consistency has been maintained in all the canons, that once you decide a sequence, you should consistently follow that sequence. Now, as I was telling you, under the canon of helpful sequence, there are different principles of helpful sequence, and Ranganathan has given these principles in pairs. He says that when we have a number of things and we have to arrange them, we generally arrange them on the basis of certain parameters. Similarly, he has said that we may use these parameters in classification also, and different schemes of classification use these parameters, like time, increasing time, decreasing time. Evolution, increasing evolution, decreasing evolution. Quantity, increasing quantity, decreasing quantity. Like I am telling you about time, we may arrange things that how they have come out historically. Those things which came earlier, they are put earlier. Those which came later are put later. Similarly, evolution, how they have evolved, either in increasing evolution or decreasing evolution. Similarly, quantity, like you see in mathematics, first order equation, second order equation, third order equations. This is an example of increasing quantity. And if you arrange them the other way, it is decreasing quantity. And so on, complexity, and always in increasing, decreasing order. Similarly, he has also given another principle of helpful sequence, that is canonical sequence. He says that the way universe of knowledge, that discipline has arranged its entities, similarly you can also arrange while you are classifying. He also says that you can arrange them by the literature available in this subject. Those with less literature, more literature, and most literature. And if they occur in space, they are in a vertical line. He says you can arrange from top to bottom or bottom up. Like in botany, he says if you want to place the parts of a plant, it could be from bottom down, from the flower to the root, or root to the flower. Similarly, for horizontal line, circle, clockwise, anti-clockwise, or horizontal line, right to left, left to right, and so on. These are all the principles of helpful sequence have been given by Ranganathan. Now let us talk for the canons for chain. And he has given two canons for chain. One is canon of decreasing extension and the other is canon of modulation. He says that in a chain, from the top to bottom, we should move in a way that the extension of a class goes on decreasing as we move down. Extension means the scope of a class. Like if you divide from library science, you come to library classification, you come to Poland classification. So we are moving down with a decreasing extension. And the other canon is canon of modulation, which states that once you move down from in a chain from top to bottom, there should be no missing link, that from class of order 0, you move to order 1, order 2, order 3, order 4. It should not be from 0, you move to order 2 and 4. Then their order 1 and 3, classes of order 1 and 3 are missing. This is canon of modulation. So this is how he has given canons for idea plane and verbal plane, and similarly he has given the canons for notational plane also, which we will discuss in our further sessions. So what we have discussed today is that Ranganathan said we should consciously divide the canons for 3 planes of work, and why we should do them, because if we consciously do this work at 3 different levels separately, we will be able to develop the work at 3 different planes, and it should be done in a scientific way, and they should also be done in a holistic way, and it will be done in an integrated way, and thus it has developed the subject of library classification very systematically. Thank you.